the ability to sell a company for a multiple of EBITDA and do it many times, as long as I can find more companies to buy, I'm disinclined to hold, because if I sell, I'm going to get 8, 10, 15, 20 years of income that day, right, that I sell. So if I can sell 4 companies a year at a multiple of 10, I get 40 years of income, whereas if I held them, I'd have to wait 40 years to get that income, right? So
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Money Mondays. We are here in an RV motorhome parked in Carlsbad at this fancy resort because our next guest is throwing a high-end mastermind. I think it's like $55,000 per person that he's training. And at the same time, right down the hall, he's throwing another mastermind that's $42,000 at the same time, the same resort. So it's amazing. So that's why we have an RV motorhome, for moments like this. He's so busy, he's throwing 2 masterminds at the same time. And so instead of trying to pin him down and try to come to a studio, the whole concept of the motorhome for the Money Mondays is I can just drive to show up right into the valet, which we're at right now, to interview Mr. Roland Frasier.
This thing is so cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So what I'd like to do is, if you could, give us the quick 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Sure. Started out in real estate as a broker, became licensed for insurance, sold policies to the people that were doing syndications, ended up realizing that the way to make a lot of money was to raise money. So I got licensed to basically be able to do that. Then went on, as I was getting a degree in accounting and then going to law school, I was buying and selling houses, and then I was like, I wonder if you could do this with businesses too. And so started buying and selling businesses, and I've never looked back. Been doing it for longer than I'm going to admit on this show.
So as you guys know, we cover 3 core topics: how to make money, how to invest money, how to give it away to charity. Roland, you have a piece of 90 companies. The number is probably higher now, but you have a piece of 90 companies that I know of that you're either an advisor to, you're an investor in, or have equity in to help them scale. How do you deal with the whole world when you have so much moving parts with all these companies?
To me, the key is that you never spend time on anything that isn't in your area of joy and genius. So I'm looking only to do the things that I'm good at, and I want other people who have joy and genius in those other areas to be good at that. So for me, it's stay off the org chart. If I don't have a job title, I don't have a job description, and I don't have a job.
I like it.
Yeah.
I gotta use that one. As you guys know, also, this podcast is always going to be under 40 minutes because the average workout is 45 minutes. The average commute to work is 45 minutes. So this episode will be between 36 and 38 minutes for your listening pleasure. Now, Roland, when someone comes to you and says, you know what, Mr. Frasier, I would love for you to be on the board of my company, or an advisor of my company, or an investor of my company, how do you make that decision when you've already got 90 plus companies in your portfolio to actually say, you know what, I'm going to work with this company, or maybe even invest in the company?
So, I mean, I think the very first most important thing is that you have an understanding of what your acquisition criteria is. And that's whether you're buying a company or you are buying with your time or money into a company. Is the company something that is going to advance you towards your ultimate goals? So knowing really clearly what is my ICP, my ideal company profile to be part of is the kind of the first critical path that I'm going to look at. And then it's going to be, what is the desired outcome that they have for having me involved in the company? And is that something that I can do within the constraints of the other things that I've got? And then it's PFM, which I got from Mark Anthony, who you know, which is, do I like the people? Is it going to be fun, the F, and is it going to make the money that I need to make as a return on my time?
So on the make money side,
Yep.
How important is it for you when a company first comes to you that's an idea, like on a napkin, versus they're actually starting something versus actually having revenue? How do you decide, would you work with someone that just has a napkin idea?
I would not. I don't do startups. So I think startups are great, and the people that do it, it's fantastic. The failure rate of those is higher than I would care for it to be. And my real area of joy and genius is in optimizing and taking the company to the next level and preparing it for exit. So the startup people are a different kind of, it's a different kind of personality and a different kind of risk profile than what I'm looking for.
Yep. So at Elevator Syndicate, for example, you guys have heard me talk about Elevator Syndicate. We have 960 investors. And within that group, we raised $56 million over the last 2.5 years.
Yep.
But as Roland just mentioned, we don't do startups. We only invest in companies doing at least $2 million in sales up to $20 million in sales. Why? Because we can pour gasoline on the fire if you're doing 17 million sales.
Absolutely.
Going from 17 to 34 is easy. Going from 0 to 1, really hard.
A lot of lift. Yeah.
Really hard to go from 0 to 1 million sales. 17 million to 34 million, actually easy.
Yeah.
It's just processes, systems, fix this, change that, pour some gas in the fire. If you're at 0, I pour gasoline, the floor just gets wet.
Yeah.
There's no fire.
It's optimizing something that already has product market fit. That's the key, right? Did it catch fire? Can we pour gasoline on it in a good way to blow it up?
Why would you say that companies, why do they need extra capital? What does it do for them?
I mean, usually without really carefully constraining what the capital is going to be used for, it helps them buy very nice Macintosh computers and lots of foosball machines and cereal bars.
Fancy
But
offices.
yeah, exactly. So it really, to me, it's got to already have some sort of what's going to be the use of proceeds or the use of the investment, right? And then when I look at that, I'm going to say, is that going to increase sales, profits, or valuation? And so if it's not going to increase one of those three things directly, where we can track it back and say we can measure that, what gets measured gets controlled, right? Gets managed. Is that what it is? That to me is the key. So I need to know what's it going to do for the company, and is it going to have an impact on one of those three areas?
So let's say Elevator Syndicate, we've raised $4 million for a company. They were at 17 million. They got to 34 million. And they're thinking about exiting. What are the things that company should do in preparation to have an exit?
So it's a lot of things. There's about 32 points on our list,
Wow.
but basically, does it have a predictable selling system that is replicable and scalable? Can they basically take capital and pour it into things that are already proven to generate sales and profits? And then what does the people look like and the pedigree of the people? Have they seen the numbers that we are projecting we're going to hit before? Because if they haven't, they think differently. Clayton Mask from Keep and Infusionsoft said that something that I really liked is that I say who got you here won't get you there.
Sure.
Right? Not just what, but who. And he said that basically what they've found is that at ones and threes, you need a completely different group of people, and they can't take you past more than two sets of 1 and 3. So if you're at 1 million, the people that got you to 1 million, maybe they can take you to 3, but it's probably not 10. People that got you to 10 are probably not going to take you to 30 and then 100, and so on and so forth. And it's so true. And entrepreneurs have a tendency to hold on to the people.
Yep.
It's like, I feel loyal, I'd be disloyal if
Yeah.
these are the guys. But you're doing them a disservice because you're promoting them into something that they're not competent to do.
Yep.
They're going to be frustrated. They will ultimately fail, and fail in kind of a bad and discouraging way. Whereas if you can say, look, it's just like you and I, we're not startup people.
No.
But the startup people aren't the growth people usually.
Sure.
Right? So it's just different sets of skills. And if you can recognize that and say, typically that's a demarcation at 1s and 3s and, in the growth pattern, then you're only going to invest your money in the people that can get you to those places. That's kind of how I look at it.
So let's say they're rocking and rolling, they got sales, and companies start coming to them. Venture capital, hedge funds, private equity groups are coming to them. How can someone that's the founder think about making a decision when it's time to exit, or should they wait longer?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? And so for me, a lot of people come and ask for, they'll have an exit offer from somebody kind of already.
Right.
And to me, to make the decision is to say, what are you leaving on the table, and how comfortable are you with the risk that something that you don't see is lurking around the corner that might cause you to not be able to realize the additional growth that you're hoping to realize. If that happens, and I've watched it happen several times,
Groupon, Snapchat.
then are you going to be kicking yourself for the rest of your life saying, I have a client that got an offer for 70 million for their company and came and said, can you help us with that? Should we take it? And I said, it depends. Where do you see the company going? Where we see this opportunity, this opportunity, this opportunity. We've got predictable selling systems. We believe we only need to pour more money into the predictable selling systems to scale what we've got, and we can be a $300 million company. And I said, well, then you have to say, would I feel terrible if this company comes in and gives me 70 million and then they take it to 300? Will you be kicking yourself for the rest of your life? If you will, then you should probably think about staying with it. But also, what if something happens, I don't know, like a pandemic, and you're,
the world shuts
couldn't
down.
possibly happen,
Right.
and your 70 million goes to 20 million
Or zero.
How bad, how bad are you going to feel about that's kind of a gut check, I think.
So what's interesting is some people, when they sell their company for, let's say, 70 million, they actually take a little bit less but keep 20% of the company, which is kind of the common number.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that company now does take it to 300 million. Their 20% is worth $60 million.
Yep.
Which is almost what they got for the whole dang company.
Yeah, or more, usually more. The carried interest is usually more.
So talk to me about what's called golden handcuffs, staying with the company for 1, 2, or 3 years. What are your thoughts about golden handcuffs?
It's tough. Again, it depends on your conversation with the people that are coming in. If you have a carried interest of 20% and you're going to be managed by somebody else. I've watched that happen multiple times. They bring in young, inexperienced MBA type people
Right.
to manage you and
Right.
your team.
Who built this company?
That to me is
Right.
generally a recipe for disaster. One story on that is we had somebody that sold their company for 18 million. The company that bought them came and brought the experienced or the inexperienced MBA management team in. Sales fell through the floor. The company was repurchased by the entrepreneur that sold the company for 18 million
Right.
for about $300,000. And that happens a fair amount,
Yes,
right? Because then it's a non-perform in the PE in the private equity company's
Right.
investment portfolio, and they're going to churn it out. Instead, I think you need to be really careful if you're taking a carried interest to be sure that you are going to be able to directly influence how that 20% that you kept is going to increase in value. And you need to be sure that the team that's acquiring has bought into the management team that you've already got. And they're going to be advisors and helpers, but they're not going to be making the management decisions until that carried interest is realized. I will tell you something that happened to us and about, I think, 40 or 50 companies that one of Blackstone's companies bought of ours is that carried interest, if it's measured based on profitability, as it frequently is. So let's say we kept 20% and we had a put call arrangement so that we could force them to buy us out after a certain period of time, or they could force us to sell. And we agreed to a multiple of EBITDA, which is very, very common. But because of the pandemic, the value of the company was zero because there was zero profits for 2 years. So Blackstone wisely said, we're exercising all of our calls and we're buying everybody out at zero EBITDA times whatever multiple we agreed to, and bought out like 40, 50 companies for nothing. Now we ended up working a consulting for equity deal to actually end up better, but it's like that was even like that happened just a couple of years ago for us. It's like that's a pretty big learning,
Sure.
So you got to be so like if you're taking one thing out of this, be sure there's a minimum buyout price, or that they can't be bought out when EBITDA falls below a certain amount if you're doing something like that. But I really, really like the carried interest. I mean, it's been very good to us.
Yeah. So there's a friend of mine named Cindy Eckert. She created the female Viagra.
Mm-hmm.
Spent years trying to get it approved, got this, got that. And when she did, she got bought out for $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And they shelved it. And she came back and bought it for $1.
That's like I said, it happens all the time, right? Isn't that crazy?
$1 billion
Yeah.
to $1.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I mentioned, inside you got multiple masterminds going on, $42,000 investment, $55,000 investment. Why should people pay to be in masterminds? What does it do for their life, their circle, their business?
Yeah, I mean, to me, network is everything. So I have not found a better way to network than to find somebody that's curated a group of people that are the exact people that I want to be with, like your 100 million, right? That to me, there's like the people that are going to invest and spend the money that it takes to be in a mastermind like that, and go and travel there, are going specifically with the intention of networking and meeting like-minded people. So the walls are down, and I haven't found another environment where you get people who've literally paid to lower their own walls to meet people, network people, and almost all of those people are going there to add value to the people that are there.
How do you determine speakers that you come in and have teach to such high-level people in these expensive, high-end investment masterminds?
Yeah, I guess it's two things, and you do a brilliant job you do a way better job of that than we do, of having aspirational people come in, and also who are the people who have been down the road that hopefully a majority of the people in the mastermind have not yet been down but would like to, so that they can basically be a mentor and say, this is the path I have taken. I've seen where you want to go, and I can show you how I got there. And there are probably some lessons for that. There are people who would like to just be around those people because they feel that the status of associating themselves with a Damon John or Shaq or other people will be a good thing for them. And that's true, right?
Sure.
That's a social proof component.
Yep.
And I like that the people that are in the masterminds have made the conscious decision to make the investment and the effort to be there. So I think I think that answers the question. How do I get the speakers? I want the speakers who are basically going to fit either that status bill or they're going to fit the mentor knowledge bill.
Got it. We also have had for many years large format conferences like the Traffic and Conversion Summit.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through the concept of having like a 10,000 person event. Why is it important for people to attend large format events in their industry or niche?
Again, to me, it's networking. I don't think that it's for knowledge. As a matter of fact, most of the conferences that I think you go to, the learning isn't the thing. It's the what they call LobbyCon. It's what am I going to do out in the lobby? Who am I going to network with? What are the hospitality suites that have parties that have the people that you want to meet? Or I find this to be very effective too. Is like I love if let's say that I'm looking to acquire a company that is in a niche software situation, like they're providing software solutions as a SaaS to pool companies.
Okay.
If I go to the pool company convention where all of the pool companies are going, probably all of those SaaS companies that are serving them are going to be exhibiting there too. And I can have conversations with them in a much, much faster in-person format than if I had to travel around the country and meet all of them. So I like it for that. But like actually just going for the knowledge, that's, I'd say, if you are looking to up level your skills as an employee, then you're going to go to the sessions. If you're looking to grow your wealth or advance your own like status in terms of network or the quality of your network, there's no better place than that to do it fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, putting on a 10,000 person conference like Traffic and Conversion Summit, it's a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm. It is. I sure wouldn't want to do it.
You have panels in so many different rooms and main stages and off-site parties and multiple days of conferences. How do you find staff members and executives that you trust to manage something that you can't watch and oversee all the thousands of moving parts when there's a 10,000 person conference?
I mean, so how do you go about hiring? We could talk about for a long time, but my favorite way to do it is to acqui-hire. So I'm looking generally to identify teams that are already proven that somebody else has put together, and then we either acquire the company to acquire the team, or we'll work to attract them. I want somebody that's already been there and done that.
So can you walk us through acqui-hire?
Sure. Yeah. So acqui-hire is just I'm going to acquire a company or a team from a company or a division from a company that has a team so that I can now basically have them do whatever it is that I want them to do. So great example would be we wanted to have a software for one of our companies, but none of the principals were good at developing software or teams, right? That's a whole specialty. So rather than trial and error it for 3 years to maybe hopefully figure out how to hire a software team, we bought a software company and then used the team that we had acquired to actually create the software that we wanted to create. And you can do that across engineering, R&D, management, operations, systems, any of those things.
So when you acqui-hire a company, you're effectively hoping for the golden handcuffs thing to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you inspire them to stick with it for years?
So typically it's culture first, and then it's compensation, which then the best compensation would be some sort of combination of fixed, variable based on performance, and equity, which is usually options.
So is there like a war room inside your house or like a war room inside your office of just like, here's the 90 plus companies I have pieces of? Like, how do you see and manage this world of stuff going on?
So we have a dashboard that basically is a portfolio dashboard, and then each company has a company dashboard. We developed a thing called the scalable operating system for ourselves that we now market and sell, but basically it came as a result of needing something that we could look at and see red, green, yellow on each important aspect of each KPI, key performance indicator for each company that we have, and then as a portfolio.
So with all these moving parts, you have masterminds, large format conferences, all these companies you're part of. How do you decide what you're willing to put your money, time, and energy into?
It's kind of the thing that I said as far as determining a company to acquire is does it advance? I think there's 11 points, and I wish I could remember them all, but basically it's does it advance our overall goal? Does it complement an already existing asset that we've got in a niche that we've got? Or does it start a new niche that we want to get into but we haven't yet? Does it meet the acquisition criteria financially for that? Does it meet, is it a cultural fit with the other things that we've got in our portfolio? Those are the things that are really probably the top of our list.
So let's say you've got an employee or an executive.
Mm-hmm.
They've been with you for years, and it's time for them to go venture off and start their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find someone to replace good talent quickly?
Yeah. So in a worst case, like if we haven't done what I'm about to say that we try to do, what we try to do is we try to have everyone hire their replacement and train their replacement so that they can advance. Because if we say your advancement is somewhat tied to your ability to find someone to replace the position you have, because otherwise you're going to be too valuable where you are and we don't want to lose you.
Right.
If we have not succeeded in doing that, then we're generally going to go to our network first, and then we're going to go to LinkedIn and do a little bit of searching, and then we're probably going to hire a search firm.
So once you've built a company and it's hit X amount of sales, but you now have all this experience, all this access to capital, connections, execution, scaling, do you have less of a reason? Like, are you willing to hold on to a company longer because it's Roland Frasier in your world? Or you're just like, hey, it's math. I got to 26 million. That was what I wanted. I'm going to sell it. Or do I wait on the 26 million and wait till I get to 80 million or 126 million before I make a decision because the capital is less important now?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and there isn't like a pat formula that we've got. We're less buy and hold people than we are flip people, because the ability to sell a company for a multiple of EBITDA and do it many times, as long as I can find more companies to buy, I'm I'm disinclined to hold, because if I sell, I'm going to get 8, 10, 15, 20 years of income that day, right, that I sell. So if I can sell 4 companies a year at a multiple of 10, I get 40 years of income, whereas if I held them, I'd have to wait 40 years to get that
Right.
income, right? So as long as there are more companies that I can take what I'm getting from that to acquire, it makes sense to me that I would be trading more than I'm going to be holding long term.
So from a syndication perspective, what are your thoughts about what we do at Elevator Syndicate? But what are your thoughts about pulling together 30, 40, 50 people into a deal like 50K, 100K, 200K at a time, rather than going to traditional like a venture capital firm?
You're going to get a way better deal raising the money yourself than going through a venture capital firm. So given that equity is the most precious thing that you'll ever sell in the business, I think that starting with a less institutional group of people is always going to be smarter, unless the venture capital firm has connections that are going to advance you faster, and you're just saying, I know I'm going to get less, I'm going to get a smaller piece of the pie, but because of the value that they can bring as smart money, it's going to ultimately be more for me, but it's almost never going to be more.
So when a CEO has a co-founder
Mhm.
and one of them begins to lose interest, how do you have the heart to heart with the founders if you're on the board? How do you have the heart to heart when it might be time for one of them to move on?
I think that the key would be that if they are performing at the required level of the KPIs for the job description. So if you've got a process for saying, this is the job title, this is the requirement or set of requirements that you need to be able to occupy that slot, this is the performance that you need to be able to do as defined by the board or the company in determining what are the 3 things is how we do it, that you're going to be accomplishing each quarter. And here are the KPIs to know if you're on track or not on track for accomplishing those. If they are meeting all those things but unhappy, then I think the conversation is, Dan, it seems like you're just kind of unhappy now. You know,
Yeah.
what's going on, right? That's to me a heart to heart about that. And I don't know that move on is the answer, right? It might be, what can we change or how can we support you that would
Re-inspire
make you
them?
happy again? Yeah. And if the answer is nothing, then if they're hitting their metrics and they don't want to leave, there's not a lot that I would probably do about it. If that's starting to affect their performance as objectively determined by KPIs that are not being hit, then I think you have the conversation. You're not meeting your KPIs, and by the way, you seem really unhappy. You know, are you sure you want to stay?
Yeah.
Right? And then you put them on a PIP, right? A performance improvement plan. If they can't hit the performance improvement within the time, then they're going to be asked to leave. And if they won't leave that way, then, they're going to be,
The hard way.
offered a way to find something else.
So when you have access to these type of deals, is it too boring to invest into something that's real estate or stock market that are still good investments, but maybe they move slower compared to the action you have with these type of deals?
I mean, yes, it's boring, but boring is good, right? Boring is good too, because I don't want I don't want constant adventure and turmoil in my
Exactly.
life. I would like some islands of stability, amongst the entrepreneurial madness. So I like those other things. For me personally, I lean towards real estate because it's where I started. And so real estate and entrepreneurial investing fits me better than, some of the other things that I could do. But I also, like you, like fun shoes and things I like alternative investments that I can actually enjoy
Yeah.
rather than just sit in a box and hope that it goes up in value.
So I'm going to walk you guys through really quickly what I was asking about. I have this investment strategy for many years, and I always talk about it at stages, events, and you've heard it on the podcast a few times, called 40, 40, 20. I take 40% of my investments, let's call it $100,000, $40,000 in low-risk investments. I want to make between 5 and 9% for the year. This is just to fight inflation, nothing crazy to happen. It's boring investments. The middle 40%, that 40,000 in this example, that medium risk, I want to make between 10 and 30% for the year. This is real estate, stock market, cash flowing businesses. And then the last 20% is called high risk. It's my shot at glory.
Fingers crossed investments.
And if I get this right, I want to have 6x, 10x, 20x, something crazy happen. And if I get it wrong or it takes too long, I'm hoping that the medium risk and the low risk cover the high risk. And so I will elaborate that on a different episode and go more in depth. But the concept of 40, 40, 20, you can change the numbers to the type of investor that you are. I've done that my whole life because it allows me to have my boring stuff, like Roland said, that it's just calm. It's easy. It's consistent.
Right.
Just happening. And I don't have to do any work or think about it. The medium risk is fun.
Yeah.
Making 18%, 14%, 26%. It's fun action. You have to do that over and over and over to make it compound, but it's fun action. It keeps you in the game.
Yep.
And the high risk is what makes your heart flutter, right? This is like can give you an ulcer, makes your stomach tense. But when you get it right,
it's pretty fun.
It's pretty fun. So we sold SneakerCon, actually, since you mentioned sneakers.
Oh, nice.
We sold SneakerCon to eBay.
Ah, awesome. Congratulations.
It was 11 years that the company was running.
An 11-year overnight success.
Right.
I like it.
I invested on year 10.
That's
so
perfect.
It worked out great.
Well done.
Okay. On the last segment, I'd like to talk about the charity element. So why do you believe it's important for company founders to involve charity into their business so that their employees get involved in some charity work?
I mean, I think from a cultural standpoint, the idea of a something bigger, and if the something bigger can relate to the mission of the company, I think that's ideal. If it can't, we have several charities that we support simply because we believe in what they do and think they're doing good in the world. But I think being a responsible corporate citizen is like being a responsible regular citizen, that you should have a portion that you're giving back.
What about in the household? How do you get family members and friends and like community members to get behind a charity that you're passionate about?
Usually it's just having conversations with them and sharing why it's something that's important to what we want, and it may or may not resonate with them though. And I don't think that they have to believe in the charities that we believe in.
Right.
Like we've never forced it on our kids. Our kids are free to choose. We do want them to be charitable.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to set, that leading by example, but we're not going to steer them into, you need to support this because we support this.
Okay. This is a much more in-depth question. So many, many years from now, hopefully it's hundreds of years from now with modern technology and science, and you're going to be able to survive for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's finally time to pass,
Mm-hmm.
and you've amassed, hopefully by that time, billions of dollars of wealth with all your investments,
Mm-hmm.
what percentage do you leave to those children?
So would be relatively small, because I think that I have the benefit of having been an attorney in estate planning for years and seen lots and lots of money destroy
Mm-hmm.
the ambitions and aspirations of the people that were receiving it. I've seen lots of kids fight amongst each other after. I've seen them sue the estates. I've watched a lot of the negative side, and of course, being an attorney, you see things that don't go right more than you see things that go right. But I really want to provide them with a platform for success so that they have that initial leg up, but I don't want to push them all the way up so that all of their drive and aspirations and motivation is gone. So as a percentage, it would be relatively light on that. But what we also do is we believe in foundations. So I think foundations are a great way to encourage your kids to participate in charities by saying, we have a foundation. This is money that's no longer ours. This is money we've donated to the foundation, but it's our foundation. So we're responsible for being the steward of that money for charitable purposes. Now, what are the charitable purposes we care about, and why do we care about those things? I think that's a really great way to kind of say, this is still there and you need to be charitable. We're kind of making you be charitable because it's no longer our money. But we aren't just abnegating everything about it and just saying, okay, here, charity, you go do it. Because I've seen also a lot of charities that don't necessarily manage a lot of money well.
Last question. What can people do to study and learn? Like, where would you tell them to go? Is it YouTube? Is it books? Is it all of the above? Go to events and masterminds? Like, how should people be consuming content to make their financial world better?
Gosh, that's, I like all of those resources. I am a big fan of autobiographies. The people who have done what you want, you can have conversations with people who are no longer here, who were geniuses at all of that stuff, simply by reading the autobiography. So
you mean like the Shoe Dog, Phil Knight type books?
Yeah. I love those, and even like the autobiography of Rockefeller and Carnegie and those things. I think those are great. There's so much terrible information out there.
Sure.
I'm watching people saying, look, my accountant's telling me I need to buy more Lambos and more watches like this because I can write them all off because it's marketing expenses. And I'm like,
it's not true.
That's like go to jail stuff.
It's literally not true.
Yeah. So you just really have to be careful to choose wisely who those influences are. But there are smart people on YouTube and TikTok, and there are smart people who have been long dead who are in books that you can only get in paperback. And I think it's just kind of, I find that it's good to consume all of them because there's a lot of different perspective around all of those different resources. So I don't think it's good just to say I only read paperback books about that, or I only look at TikTok for that.
So if someone wants to find more of your world, jump in some of these masterminds, invest into their brain, invest into their network, walk us through some of the names of the brands and the companies.
Sure. Well, we have a podcast called Business Lunch, which you're going to be on really soon.
Yes.
And then everything else is like Epic Network is our buying and selling, Scalable.co is our business operating system, digitalmarketer.com is our digital marketing training, and pretty much for me everything is / Roland Frasier.
So Roland Frasier, check him out across social media. He puts out really, really, really good content. Like, if he wasn't sitting here, I'd say the exact same thing because his content is super good. Oftentimes, I'll forward it to certain friends like, hey, this is what he's talking about, buying companies and investing in companies. It's fascinating to me. So check out Roland Frasier across social media. As you guys know, we run this ad-free. It's been over a year and a half. And all we ask of you guys is to support us by going to themoneymondays.com, showcasing this with your friends, posting on your stories, tweeting it, Facebooking, etc. Because when we get those rankings, people listen to this podcast and it helps them with their financial world. They can have blunt discussions with their friends, family, and followers about money because we all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money, and we here at the Money Mondays think it's rude to not talk about money with your friends and family. So check us out on themoneymondays.com. Check out Roland Frasier across social media, and we will see you guys next Monday.